a Rust update as well. I wonder if they've screwed something up with that package.
All right, fellas, we are live. This is our monthly chat with patrons, which I typically do on the last Sunday of every month. And already we've got a crowd in here in the patrons chat here on camera with me on this Jitsi conference call. We got several people also hanging out in the YouTube chat. You guys in the YouTube chat, let me know about the audio. Can you hear me? But also, can you hear these guys? Because I'm on a different stream than their audio stream. So someone say something so we can get a
I'm
audio
sure that
test.
absolutely nobody wants to hear me whatsoever because I'm just going to sit there and I'm going to make somebody mad today because that's what I do.
Yeah, mute
We
yourself,
got several
boy.
people also hanging out in the YouTube chat.
Hello, can you hear me?
YouTube chat. Let me know about no, we got audio. You. Can you hear me? But also, can you hear these guys? Because I'm on a right stream than their audio stream. So, and I don't see anybody chatting in the YouTube chat. Am I in the wrong YouTube chat? Audio sounds good. Okay. Yep, it sounds good. I'm previewing it.
Well, that's good.
All right, so no pulse audio issues this time. But first, actually, we've done enough of these now. I always know the two problems I run into every time I do this particular stream. I've got to change the audio tracks in OBS to make sure we're all on track 1. I also have to change pulse audio volume control because it always outputs you guys' audio to my audio mixer, which is not right. You guys should be my desktop audio on the computer, on the motherboard in the computer. So it only took us, what, like 4 years to finally figure that out?
Blur My Shell got updated.
Audio is out of sync.
So write a script and deal with it automatically.
Hey, Big Pod, you're streaming a default browser image.
I know.
Okay.
I'm streaming a default, not virtual camera is not on image.
Why is it downloading extended? But it's not there.
Audio.
So what has everybody been up to the past month in Linux? I'm sure somebody has some horror stories that.
Oh, I've got some horror stories for you. Hey, Big Pod. My graphics card died on my computer. The same one that I've been using and abusing with playing around with crypto mining, overclocking, overvolting, undervolting, underclocking, and testing out beta versions of firmware and such on. It finally died, so I've been using an Intel Arc GPU for about the past 2 weeks now, and it has been an adventure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, did you buy that card used?
No. Oh, the original one?
Yeah.
No, I bought it release day.
Okay. Because I thought you bought one of these cheap used cards to do your crypto mining. Well, some of those things have been used and abused to the point where you were lucky to get any length of time out of it anyway. That's the reason they sell those things so cheap on eBay.
Actually, I would disagree. Knowing a few things about those people, they probably take better care of their graphics cards.
Those people, is that what we call them?
Miners, whatever you want to call them.
Right.
What a lot of miners do is that they will actually undervolt the cards.
Yeah.
For extended reliability. The issue that I ran into is that I bought a 5700 XT on release day, like literally the day that AMD allowed Micro Center to sell it to me. I bought it, and I helped with upstream kernel development of the AMD GPU driver, literally with that card, where I was sitting there flashing firmware packages on it. I was testing the overclocking and the underclocking, and then they came out with this fancy thing called Bitcoin, and apparently I could mine it using consumer GPUs still. So I mined Bitcoin with it for a little bit because I don't game. What am I going to use? What am I going to use a video card for?
Boy.
Yeah, so it was a solid mining card that ran at 100% utilization, overclocked and overvolted for about a year and a half or so.
Have you heard of video transcoding? That is a good job.
I started using it for that afterwards.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that a good video card can be used for other than
Yep.
Bitcoin mining.
Yeah,
I
but
have a question
it
about
was
that
literally
arc.
doing nothing.
Have a question
Why
about that
arc?
arc.
Because
No,
I-
not why. I understand why. They're technically speaking actually good cards. How's the AV1 encoder?
I have yet to figure out how to get the AV1 encoder to work because I have to manually script FFmpeg because I haven't found a GUI program that offers it as an
Yeah.
option yet.
Yeah, there are no proper drivers because well, AV1
And in the chat,
isn't
we've
even
got
really supported yet anywhere.
in the YouTube chat, Praetorian says it's been proven false that mining doesn't really hurt a card. They're designed to run at 100% for the life of the card. Interesting.
The server ones typically are. The consumer ones,
Yeah.
not so much because they. But realistically, the difference between them is like the heat sinks on them is that it's a completely
Right.
different design.
Because if you're
No.
pegging it at 100% forever, you would think that would do.
That
some
said, like I
damage.
said, while I was doing this stuff, I was also overvolting the card too.
Oh yeah.
Now the big crypto miners, like the ones that are really doing this professionally, I mean they've got some creative cooling methods, set up for their little farms, right? Many of them they're building their crypto mining operations near water sources, for example. They're keeping they're not doing this necessarily like you, the home user.
Yep.
Well, another thing, actually, yes, graphics cards are made to be run for like all processors are made to be run
mean,
extended periods of time. 100%.
There's a guy comparing a graphics card running at 100% and a car running at max revs. That's actually not a use case because there's a lot more wear items on a car than there are a GPU.
A lot more moving parts.
Like I said, I was overvolting, so of course my graphics card was running hot to begin with.
You were running more walls than it is recommended.
Yes, I was.
But
I was basically cooking my graphics card in an oven.
Yeah, I was listening to some Intel engineer on one YouTube channel. If anybody knows, Der Bauer, he does a lot of overclocking and deleting of CPUs, and basically what that Intel engineer that does basically thermal stuff for Intel is that basically CPUs are made to be run for extended periods of time at max temperature allowed. That's basically what we're made to do. Like, so when you're doing stuff, it is no problem if it gets to 100 degrees or whatever the temperature is that's set as max by their engineers. So it's probably same for graphics cards. It would not surprise
that heat is a problem, though. If you've ever been in a room with a lot of servers, the heat is a serious problem.
Yes, but not because of a single graphics card.
Anyway, I'm not saying it's necessarily hurting that CPU, but I mean it's putting off a ton of heat.
Yeah.
That said, it sits in the same room as my Gen 2 build servers, or at least at the time it did.
Well,
they're not running Gen 2
that's
anymore.
Gen 2.
So that room does get pretty hot sometimes.
I knew Gen 2 was going to make it into the conversation at some point.
Of course. I might be installing it right now too.
But yeah, those GPUs are those GPUs we buy as consumer GPUs are essentially the same GPUs or same graphics chips as the actual server equivalent. So take your or even workstation equivalent. Only difference between them, especially the top end ones, is how much they are tested.
Well, speaking of
how long they would run. Like the server GPUs have 24/7 operation of written that they can do, while consumer ones don't.
Yeah, speaking of GPUs, I'm moving away from NVIDIA. I'm done.
Why?
Good for you, Dark Zero. I trust me, as somebody that owns both. Yeah, the NVIDIA headaches are they're too much.
They're not worth it. They're not.
They're
worth
really
it.
not.
And lately, with their drivers, with the latest drivers they just released, the 530.41.
Ain't it 535 now already?
No. It's 5.30 right now.
Yeah. That was on my home computer. I could check, but I don't.
They just released it. They released those drivers to optimize them for XFCE because the previous versions were not very good on XFCE, apparently. I'm
And the
like,
latest package in the Arch repo is 530.41.
yep, that's the
I
one.
thought I heard about 535. I don't know.
Well, I'm currently on 525 right now and Nobo 37. It's based in Fedora Linux, but for gaming and content creation.
Oh yeah, but still they can't get their act together, and because of that, I'm like, I'm done. It's and all the Kwin crashes on KDE because I'm a KDE main.
Yeah, so I knew that was what you were.
No.
So I don't
have
use
the crashes.
KDE, so I don't have that problem. But I see people online constantly complaining about KDE and
online,
Plasma.
but me, I don't complain myself. I don't complain about Kwin. It never crashes for me. But the problem for me is there's a lot of lag.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
And a
lag
lot of
on
people complain
NVIDIA.
about the screen tearing with NVIDIA on Plasma.
Yeah, and also add on top of that the lag. Like sometimes when you're dragging windows around, you
It's
feel
not smooth.
you feel the lag. I have an AMD system in the store. No lag. It's super fast, super responsive. So I'm like, yeah, I'm done. I'm cutting.
You know, I wonder, because this has been a problem as long as I've ever used Linux with KDE and NVIDIA has always been an issue. And I wonder if any of like the lead maintainers of KDE actually use NVIDIA.
I don't.
Because my guess is they probably don't. That's why
Yeah, because they
it's
support
always
open
been like
source.
this. Yeah.
So like, open source, it must be AMD.
Because you go back and you look at issues that were open on the Ubuntu forums 15 years ago. People were complaining about KDE 3 and KDE 4 in NVIDIA. And it's the same issues people are having these days with Plasma.
Yeah.
Oh, then they should fix it. Simple as that.
They're not getting to it. They're not because it's proprietary. They're not getting to it. They keep saying we're fixing Wayland for NVIDIA, but they're not. The problem is they're not talking because NVIDIA doesn't talk to anyone.
They shouldn't need to talk. Sorry.
They should, because they need to understand what do they need to fix to get NVIDIA to work on their end. If they don't have access to the code, how can they make their code talk to a code that they don't know anything about?
How does then GNOME make it work? How does anything else make it work? They don't have any more access.
GNOME's not making NVIDIA work on Wayland either. That's the NVIDIA kind of has to
right there.
There's
a laptop that runs NVIDIA, runs Wayland only. Right there.
Well, Xorg, I'm sure, is on the machine.
Xorg,
you don't have any.
Xorg, it is on the machine, but it is on there because it is standardly installed by the operating system I use.
GTK still supports it, that's why.
GTK still supports what? I missed that. Oh, yeah.
Hey, one thing about NVIDIA, if you're installing a Linux distribution and you use a desktop magnifier, such as the one on the GNOME and KDE, you can experience performance issues because there's no 3D acceleration.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
those magnifying glasses, like with the KDE and GNOME, they suck up a little CPU. Yeah, you'll notice some glitchiness, especially if it's not a powerful machine. That's just the nature of it.
Yeah, then the past few weeks, I did a couple of videos. One is for the GNOME desktop, and another is for KDE. For example, on KDE with the magnifier, one in Wayland, it does not know where to focus when I type compared to using Xorg.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and on the GNOME side, when you record using OBS, when you're recording using Paperwire on Wayland, the magnifier starts out smooth, then it gets choppy, and then it freezes for a quarter of a second, and then it starts up all over again, repeating itself. So I found out a bug about that on the internet.
Well, my guess is the way that this typically works, a lot of the accessibility stuff, like like the magnifier and things like that, that'll oftentimes that stuff will be some of the last things to get fixed. Like especially when you're talking about with Wayland, like they've got so many other things that they've got to get working in Wayland before they get to some of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Who knows? Like you filed the bug. I mean, people know it's a problem. When it will get fixed, that's really out of our control unless you're going to try to fix it yourself. And
yeah, I can't fix it myself. I mean,
right, exactly.
I have a visual disability.
And then if you're not part of the project, it would take you so long to get up to speed learning the code anyway, even if you wanted to, if you weren't part of the GNOME team or the Plasma team or
Yeah. Yeah.
These are not small projects, right?
Yeah, and that's the problem. That transitions very well into your previous video that you made about the state of Linux. This is without the intercommunication between projects, there will always be problems.
Yeah.
When you say intercommunication with projects, did you have one specifically in mind? Were you talking about like GNOME talking to Plasma, the KDE guys, or just
specifically that one is the exception to the rule because the GNOME people talk to the Plasma people.
Right.
That works, but the rest of them, like when you talk Fedora, talking to OpenSUSE and stuff like that, there's not a lot of.
Well, yeah, because like when you get if you're talking like the RPM based distros,
not only the RPM. I'm just giving an example.
But yeah, they all go in their different directions. And same thing with the Debian-based distros. So many of them do different things. Arch-based distros. I mean, Manjaro kind of goes its own way compared to.
Correct. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, because of this, there's a lot of lingering issues that keep arising, and everybody doing things without discussing it. Like the recent thing that happened between Manjaro and Asahi. Now Asahi completely blocked Manjaro. They will not talk to them. They will not consider them because 3 times now, Manjaro took Asahi code without their permission, implemented them in Manjaro, and then as a result, and it's not only Manjaro to blame. It's also Arch, because Arch, they see what Manjaro are doing. They see, oh, okay, if Manjaro did it, we should be able to do it without testing, blindly merging upstream. And doing it without testing, it will cause issues to a lot of people, and then they keep blaming each other and the pointing fingers and all that. That's not a way to do things if you want something to grow. It's like you said in your video. It's animalistic, basically. It's to each their own, and completely fighting each other on things and making things more difficult than they should be.
I won't say every distribution suffers from this.
I'm not generalizing, but there's a lot of them.
But Arch is unique because you can see it with Arch. Arch has become this big distribution that has so many users, as far as especially all the Arch-based distros now. There's so many of them out there, and they don't have enough people maintaining that thing. They don't have enough package maintainers. They don't have enough people developing Arch. And you never see them. They don't actually have a community manager out there trying to recruit people. Like they don't have none of that. Like
to put it simply, it's the wild, wild west.
Right, and it's become this gigantic thing with this really small team. It's way too small. They need 10 times as many people working on that thing.
Yeah, and it's like you said in your video, it's a mess out there.
Packages are out of date. Packages are broken. I'm not talking about AUR packages. I'm talking about in the core repository. There's too many broken packages. There's too many things that are a year out of date.
Yep.
On a rolling release distribution.
Yep. Yeah. There's even on the AUR a lot of packages that are outdated. I'm talking about main packages, but people keep forgetting, like I said on Matt's podcast last night, there are packages, or on my podcast, I forget, but there's a lot of packages that have the main package, the stable package, that's considered the stable package, and in parallel you have the Git package, which is the rolling package, the test, if you want, package or whatever. This is completely bleeding edge. So there's a lot of main packages that don't get updated anymore, but they're if you build them from their Git, you notice that it's constantly being maintained. But the maintainers on the AUR of the stable packages completely left them behind for people to fend for themselves. And when we are talking about your regular day-to-day user who just wants to turn on their machine and get it and expect it to be working, they're not going to go and hunt for Git packages and compile them and go through all this hassle. They just want their system to just work. And as I said last night, the running the update command is a toss of a coin these days. It's a toss of a coin. It's a flip of a coin.
I've got a video
your system either works or something goes wrong during the update. A package conflicts with another one, and it will cause your system not to boot.
I'm just going to quickly preview. I've got a video coming out tomorrow that I recorded yesterday. I had a bad update on Arch, and I went ahead and put some of it on camera. As far as it's educational on how to fix what happened, but this is the kind of stuff that props up every now and then.
That's why I'm saying that running the update command is a flip of a coin, because you never know at what moment updating without reading what's getting updated, without bothering noticing what's getting updated, and you update blindly. You might have your system break. Then again, it might not break.
One thing I wonder, because with Arch and with Debian, we're going to take those two as an example of like the big distributions that most distributions base off of. And Debian has Ubuntu, and Ubuntu contributes back to Debian, and they actually talk, and we're on Big Pod can talk a little bit about this, the relationship between Debian and Ubuntu. Does Arch have that kind of relationship with Manjaro? Because if Manjaro's putting in a lot of work that the Arch team could use.
No, they don't. They don't talk to each other. They just take each other's packages without asking.
Manjaro does not report anything upstream.
That's what I was wondering.
If anything, it's upstream developers bitching at Manjaro and not the other way around. It should be the other way around.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
With Ubuntu Debian, it's half the Debian development is Ubuntu.
Is Ubuntu and vice versa. Yeah, because I know, like, you see, like, the board on these distributions, there's the same people, right? Right.
If you think about it, the team that works on the what is called on the Ubuntu, at least one of them is package maintainer in Debian.
Debian, yeah.
I know when we worked on Ubuntu Mate was exclusively done in Debian.
I remember, wasn't Martin Wimpress actually working on packaging Mate for Debian rather than Ubuntu?
Yeah.
That way it would be upstream, and then,
that's
see, that makes sense. That makes sense to me. Yeah.
We work directly in Debian.
Because if Manjaro puts all their stuff in Arch, I mean, they would get it anyway. So why not contribute to the mother project, essentially, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know.
But yeah, I think that's part of the problem, Steve, is like I said, Arch needs help, and they don't look like they're getting it, especially from the biggest distribution that bases off them, which, of course, is Manjaro.
Yeah. But it's this whole mess that not only that, it's not only with Arch. Arch is one of the big ones, yes, but a lot of projects don't ask each other, is your thing ready to be used? Can we merge it into or use it in our project? Like, is it stable enough? Will it work with ours? Or something like that. They don't do a meeting or do this kind of thing. There's no management, and for a lack of a better word, there is no standardization.
And it's hard to have management when so many things are community-based projects.
Yeah.
Yeah, and standardization, when you utter this word,
Hold on, we've got some feedback coming through from somebody. Okay.
They're too scared.
All right, go ahead.
They're too scared from standardization, the standard.
Yeah.
There is no standard.
I remember it was in, and it's like, and a lot of people in Linux community is also against standardization.
Yes.
They go as far as to say, it's Linux. Why would we even have standards? Why should we have standards?
Well, if you want standards, you use FreeBSD, because all of this has been an argument for FreeBSD.
I agree 100% with that.
Relevant XKCD number 927. There are 14 competing standards. Ridiculous. We need to develop one universal standard. There are now 15 competing standards.
Well,
you can't replace anything in Linux because nothing ever dies. Free and open source software never dies. It's like, we're all going to move to System D and quit using sys5 init. But literally, there are some distributions that are still running sys5 init, will always run sys5 init. Slackware is never, they have stated that we will never change.
That's not a problem.
Yeah, that's right. You can't make a standard. There's no standards. Yeah.
Well, for a lack of a better word, System D is a standard. That doesn't mean that somebody.
Well, from popularity standpoint, how many people use things, System D is a standard. I would say Debian package formats is a standard because that's the dominant, I guess, package format on Linux. You could say the most popular thing is a standard, but that doesn't mean people have to necessarily use that standard.
Yeah. At the end of the day, if you look at it that way,
a lot of people want to throw this word around, standards, like it's a standard, meaning you have to use it. No, that's not what freedom's about.
Exactly.
I don't have to use anything.
That's not what standard means. Because at the end of the day, metric system is a standard. Yet there is a whole country, actually 2 countries, 3 countries in the world, one of the biggest countries in the world that don't use it. And yet it is still a standard. Yet there are people who don't use it and are very combative against it.
Yeah, but
I'm looking at you, Americans.
They keep Linux keeps telling you, hey, you can build your own Linux operating system from the ground up. Number one, who's crazy enough to do it? They're talking about the nerds and the willing people out there. But even
there's a handbook that'll talk you through it. The Linux from Scratch guide is basically building a Linux distro from the ground up.
Yeah.
That's what they're talking about typically.
Yeah, but even if you want to build your own operating system the way you want, you're never going to end up with the operating system that you want because you got this thing called dependencies, and in some cases. There's 16 dependencies to replace a single package.
That's why nobody creates an independent Linux distribution. That's why even though anybody could roll their own Linux from scratch, basically following the Linux from scratch guy, build their own Linux distribution that's independent from it. Okay, now what about package management? What about dependencies? Like none of that. You don't have a package manager. If you're rolling your own, you're going to have to create one. You're going to have to create your own package format and all of this. Why would you do that when you could just base off another distribution?
And in order to manage the packages the way you want, if you want a certain version and you want to freeze it, you don't want to use the upstream version because you know that the upstream version might be broken at some point. You want to manage everything. You have to fork the entire repository. Let's say Arch, for example. Arch, you want to build your Arch system, you have to pull the entire Arch repositories, you have to clone them, select all the packages that you need, remove everything that you don't need, and freeze them yourself, and you're going to manage all this. Nobody is capable of doing that. Very few people in the world are going to do that. So I'm with the exception of Josh here. But nobody in their sane mind is going to do that. So in reality, you can, but nobody will.
Just to let you know, I'm not the one that's actually pulling down the entire Arch repository. That's my ISP that's doing it for me and himself.
Well, yeah, because you asked him to.
Well, he volunteered. I didn't even ask him to do it. He's just like, yeah, I'll just go and copy that. I'll just go and create a mirror. That way we can both benefit from it.
Let me use words that we should all remember. Can doesn't mean should.
Correct.
Simple as that. Can doesn't mean should.
Yeah. There's a lot of things. I see a lot of software on Linux, and I was just thinking about this morning, and it's funny, Big Pod brings that up. People writing scripts or developing programs that I saw one this morning. I thought, this is a solution searching for a problem. Like, I saw a program that I like. This has no real use. Like, somebody wrote this mainly just to write it, but it doesn't actually solve a problem for anybody. And there's a lot of that out there on the internet.
That's kind
You've never come across a piece of software that you understand what it does, but you're like, who in the hell would use this thing?
Yeah.
No.
Probably.
There's a, and I get people do things for fun. It's school projects and things like that. But some of that stuff actually finds its way in our Linux distributions.
Since I'm building the XFCE thing
for Zero Linux, you going back to?
No, it's not for. I'm using Zero Linux to build it because here's the thing: I am a distro maintainer. I need to keep my skills sharp with everything.
Okay.
So I just do it on the side. It's never gonna see the light of day. I'm just keeping my skills sharp. But since I'm building the XFCE thing here, I'll give you an example of a package that's absolutely unnecessary, and it's here. It exists only for the fun. It's a package called, I'll let you know 1 second. It's called, what's it called? I'm looking at
in the chat. Leviticus goes, "Are you talking about Microsoft Office?"
Well,
No.
you're probably in a place that uses Microsoft Office.
What's it called?
Sadly, Microsoft Office is actually badly wanted on Linux. There's a lot of people that would love the Destiny. Yeah,
I don't use it, but I still want it. For
a lot of people. That's a deal breaker for them not using Linux. Actually, is not having the desktop Office clients.
Mhm.
I could then recommend Linux to so many more people that I can't now. Simple as
It'd be even bigger in the enterprise than what it is currently. Yeah. Which we have Office 365. You could always do everything web-based, but it would be nice if you had the actual desktop client.
I don't know if it's still possible, but it used to be that if you had a 365 subscription, you could install the desktop version.
technically you can. I'm not gonna give a 10-year-old Wine-based Office.
No, it's
But
Wine.
they need Office for their school projects.
Mm-hmm.
I really won't do them that kind of bad friend.
Yeah, though they can use the old version of WordPerfect. Somebody ported that or made it work in it.
Yay!
How old is WordPerfect when we're talking about? I mean,
it's honestly probably better just use LibreOffice.
Yeah,
Actually,
because when you say the old version of WordPerfect, I was like,
it
what,
was
from the
20
80s?
It was like 20 years ago when Coral Linux was around.
Yeah, I remember they had their own Linux version. That's right.
But the modern WordPerfect's not too bad. I have a license and I've tried using Quattro, but I've been mostly using FreeOffice lately. So
yeah, and I had a comment the other day on a video, and I responded to the guy who was commenting on one of my videos. It had nothing to do with the video I had made, but you could tell he was a new Linux user, probably young. He wanted to know why the Linux community can't get Microsoft's OneDrive to work on Linux.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that complain not only for Microsoft products but for Google services as well.
Yeah. And I tried to explain to this guy. I know he's obviously doesn't know better. That's like, hey, Microsoft OneDrive's proprietary software. The Linux community can't do anything. We can't even read the source code.
It's entirely.
How can we make a client for it?
There's an AUR package for that.
But it's not. It doesn't work
because
it's not.
Their API still exists somewhere for.
The problem is the little hacky solutions that the community does come up with. They're not official clients, and none of them work. That's the problem.
True. And I found the package. It's called Figlet.
Figlet, yeah, I know Figlet. I love it.
It's a fun thing, but it's not a necessary.
It serves a real purpose if you're making ASCII text-based websites like in Gopher or Gemini. Sometimes you want to do a fancy header. Figlet actually has a purpose, Big Pod. I'm going to defend Figlet.
Figlet and Lolcat are two reasons why I use Linux.
Now, Lolcat probably is not
Lolcat.
something you
I stopped using Lolcat ages ago.
I also still use Calsay too.
Calsay doesn't have a real purpose. I mean,
Calsay, no, baby. Calsay. And
Well,
there's
we do have
Fortune
a
is another
full
one.
demonstration.
Yeah.
FM 6000 also. There's FM 6000.
I mean, does anybody use X-Eyes? You know, the little two eyeballs that
I'm
appear on your screen that follow your...
Those packages,
same
those
reason.
kind of packages are unnecessary. They exist for the fun of it.
It's
No.
part of Xorg, though. This thing.
Those their packages exist for a very specific reason for demonstration. X-Size is one of them.
There's
And,
a,
and I
Yeah.
was like,
go ahead.
Cowsay, Lolcat, those exist for very specific reason. It's called demonstration.
Yeah, well, demonstration, yes, but usefulness, not really. But as I was building the XFCE edition, and I am the kind of guy that likes complete collections. So I went to the AUR and I hunted everything related to Thunar. Because, you know, there's Thunar, the main package, and the main plugins that come with XFCE. But I wanted the complete collection for Thunar. So now I have Thunar Extended instead of Thunar because it's better, apparently. Thunar VCS plugin, Thunar Secure Delete, Thunar Archive Plugins ZSTD, replacing the Archive plugin, Thunar Custom Actions. I added the entire collection of Thunar on the ISO just for the heck of it. Just for fun. I don't know what they do. I don't know what's the use for them, but I just included them.
They've got different little packages for various extensions for Thunar, for like managing like mounted volumes and and things like that. There's a lot of extras.
Thunar is not the best file manager out there. I'm thinking of replacing it with the Nemo.
I actually like Thunar though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm thinking of replacing it with Nemo for fun.
I deleted.
What was that, Murray?
I deleted Mousepad and deleted half of XFCE along with it one time.
Wow.
What distribution were you using?
Oh, it's a long time ago. I wouldn't remember. It's
okay,
ancient.
because Mousepad only has three dependencies on XFCE, and distributions all the time completely for some reason decide that they're going to try to tie it into XFCE panel, and I have no idea
some
why.
distributions package their XFCE desktop as like a meta desktop that contains everything. So sometimes when you go to remove a package, you need to really check, hey, is it going to remove just...
Yeah.
Because I've done that with... I know I've done some things on Ubuntu before where I removed a certain GNOME application, and it just removed GNOME. It's like, hey, what the hell just happened?
Well, that
happens.
By packages who try and make recommended dependencies very much, basically everything.
Mm-hmm.
That's a problem. It should be everything should be as minimal as possible when it comes to dependencies.
A lot of it too. Sometimes the desktop environments themselves, they package all of their custom suite of applications, and they want to have it all linked together, even though your terminal doesn't need to be linked to your desktop environment. Your text editor doesn't need to be linked to your... like you could have those as separate...
This is extreme. This is going to extremes. But I would have preferred if they set Thunar to download all its own dependencies, only the Thunar dependencies. We don't need to get the half of XFCE with it. But if they made it so it gets only its own dependencies, everything Thunar related in one package. That's what I did in my package manager. For example, Jellyfin. A lot of people requested Jellyfin because they want the free open source version of Plex. So
they should be using a Docker container.
And so
that's
hard for normal users.
Exactly.
Big Pod.
So
it's a lot.
The way I packaged it up is I made all the Jellyfin packages part of that package. So when you install that, it will install everything. I I even went so far as to do the same thing with Flatpak, like OBS Studio Flatpak. When you install the OBS Studio Flatpak, it will only install the OBS Studio Flatpak. What I did, what I did in my package manager was when you go to the Flatpak section and you select to install OBS, it will pull all the plugins except the NVIDIA and proprietary stuff, but it will pull all the plugins available on FlatHub, because there are plugins on FlatHub for OBS, just people don't know about them because you need to hunt for them via the terminal. No GUI,
a desktop environment that really suffers from having too much stuff all interlinked is really Plasma is the worst offender, because in some ways they're really limiting how many people use a lot of their applications.
Dolphin
For example, I think the Dolphin File Manager would have a lot more users if it didn't have all those KDE dependencies. People would install it on other desktops. The terminal emulator, Console with a K, great terminal emulator. I'd gladly install it and use it if it wasn't so tied to KDE.
Yeah,
because I don't want to install KDE with it.
Yeah, the Crusader file manager as well can't be used outside of KDE. I use that,
and I think that would grow KDE, because then they would have people using some of their KDE applications and would be happy to donate to KDE money or time or code that weren't necessarily Plasma users, but depend on things like Dolphin or Console or Crusader. I think that would help them in a lot of ways.
The problem with that, it's not it's not KDE dependencies that Dolphin keeps pulling in. It's all the dependencies for it to be able to work correctly with all the effects and all the plugins and all the stuff. They're all tied to Qt. It's a Qt-based app, so it will pull all the Qt dependencies, and it has a lot of them, unfortunately.
Well, I don't mind installing Qt because I'm going to install other Qt programs anyway. I just don't want KDE dependencies.
Yeah, unfortunately, the problem here is not Dolphin having all these dependencies as much as its dependencies having their own dependency.
Okay. Well, that would make sense.
Basically, dependency chain.
Yes, dependency chain, correct. So, they need to break up the dependency chain a little bit and let Dolphin loose, because a lot of people love that file manager and they want to use it on something else. But everyone is scared to pull too many KDE stuff, too many.
Okay, we got a big spender in the chat here. I see 110 of whatever that currency is. I don't know what it is. What distro is the most resource efficient? KDE, GNOME, and XFCE. These are not
XFCE.
distros. These are desktop environments. You could argue XFCE, though, although with the work that the GNOME Foundation is putting into hardware acceleration, GNOME might be taking XFCE's crown before too long.
Yeah, I would say XFCE and Plasma actually is pretty light these days. GNOME, depending on the distribution, could be a little heavier.
Yeah, Fedora.
Yeah, GNOME on Fedora is kind of heavy. GNOME on Ubuntu is a little lighter, but it's still.
You said Fedora. I almost died.
Yeah, but XFCE is light on any distribution. If you want a good XFCE,
you have to specify DT. You have to specify
XFCE Linux Mint.
As long as you don't ship all the effects and everything under and extensions and whatever.
Yeah, but nobody. Yeah, XFCE. Get Linux Mint's XFCE edition. You'll be happy with that.
Yeah, and on the XFCE that I'm working on, just to keep my skills sharp, I replaced the XFCE panel with Polybar.
How's that working?
I'm just taking themes that Adi from Archcraft. I think Archcraft.
Because Polybar doesn't have a task manager, so floating window managers don't really work with Polybar unless you just don't want a task manager.
Task manager, there is a module that simulates a task manager, but the icons are shit.
Yeah, so that's Polybar is designed for tiling window managers, so it never had a task manager. So if you minimize a window, how are you going to unminimize it? There's no task manager.
Task manager. I thought you were talking about a tray. Task manager, no, it doesn't have. No.
Yeah, so that's a problem with Polybar. It's not.
No,
that's why I have a problem with Archcraft. Archcraft using Polybar with OpenBox just
but
like
but
you're
you can
you're
get
limiting
over-
users.
You can get over the task manager issue with by having Plank.
A dock. Yeah, but if you're gonna have a dock, why don't you have Polybar? Just get rid of the bar and just have the dock.
No, but the bar is to have. Well, my problem with Polybar is not what you said. My problem with Polybar is it doesn't have a global menu.
No,
Oh.
it's not designed. It's not because it's for tiling window managers. They don't do stuff like it's not designed for a floating window manager. And it's probably never going to be. You're trying to make it
but
into
it's
something
lighter
it's
than-
never going to be.
It's lighter
I
than the
tried
XFCE
the
panel.
global menu thing, and honestly, it's just kind of jank. It's kind of a jank
Yeah.
workflow for me these days.
It
Not
works
for me.
pretty well in Unity, but
Well, it works well in Unity because Canonical would fork packages to make it work well in Unity.
right. Yeah, and
Global
in
packages-
Plasma it kind of
global
works.
menus make no sense to me.
Now,
What do
I
you mean by
don't necessarily like it. Like there was a hacky way to get a global menu in XFCE a few years back, and that was buggy as hell.
Yeah.
Like it never worked right.
I'm not saying that it bugs me that I want the global menu in XFCE. No, I accepted the fact that in XFCE global menu let each application have its own menu within it. But I'm using Polybar because it looks better.
No.
It looks better. It's just plain. It's
Well,
lighter
that's
and
the
looks
reason.
better.
That's the reason. Like Archcraft is using it with their open box configs. Is they want to make something pretty. They don't care if it doesn't work right, which is fine if that's. But
Well,
I don't
with
know.
the
I think you
with
do
the
have a.
XFCE
If you're
panel,
putting
I
a distribution out for the public, you need to make sure it works. Not necessarily. If it looks good, great, but it has to actually work for the end user.
Yeah, but I tried to have a floating XFCE panel. The window title bars go underneath it all the time when you maximize them. That's the problem with the XFCE panel. So with Polybar, at least you can set a margin space, and nothing will overlap or go underneath or whatever. So there are some features in Polybar that work better than the XFCE panel, but I don't know. I'm
What about
hunting-
switching out the XFCE panel for the LX panel?
What's LX panel? I never heard of it.
The old LXDE panel.
Why would you use the
Oh,
Alex panel when you can use the Alex?
I don't know. It's just something else for him to try. It's GTK based, and I know it's a normal panel. Like it's got a menu and
Yeah,
taskbar.
but can we make
and
it floating? That's the question.
I'm not sure. I've never
Why
tried.
would you want to have a floating panel?
Huh?
Why would you want to have a floating panel?
I like a floating panel. It's just neater.
It's for the Unix porn screenshots, Big Pod. Come on.
He maintains Zero Linux, which is basically just Unix porn, but as an actual distribution, you can download and install.
It's Unix porn, the distro.
That said, he's doing an absolute bang up job making KDE look a lot like GNOME.
Oh.
No, making GNOME look like KDE in 0G.
Now, if you want a floating panel, I think if you want a floating panel, your best bet would be one of the dock programs. Like
Yeah.
Oh no!
Latte
If I
Dock or
install Latte
Plank
Dock, that's a KDE coming with XFCE.
yeah, but that's what they're designed to be. You're trying to make these panels be a dock when really you need
Don't
a dock.
want Latte Dock, use Plank.
Yeah.
Can we make Plank a panel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just make it as wide as a screen.
Yeah. Pretty much every dock I've ever used had a panel mode where you could actually just make it 100% or however size.
And can you add a system tray and stuff like that on it?
I haven't used Plank lately, but most of the docks have a system tray applet.
I think it does actually have a system tray applet, but it's actually kind of terrible.
Oh, okay.
Honestly, just use Tent 2.
Tent
Or
2?
if since you're shipping XFCE anyway, just use the XFCE panel.
Actually, not a bad idea. Now that he threw out Tent 2, you could make that floating, and you could. It has a taskbar. It has a sys tray. It doesn't have a menu system, but you could add an icon.
Ignore the
You can make a menu system. You could. There are third-party menus that you could integrate into it.
But
That's not a hard thing to do. That's actually a good suggestion, Josh. Tent 2. Check that out.
The deep desktop environment does have a floating panel at the bottom.
No, and it's a Qt-based desktop though. He's putting this on XFCE.
I'm still waiting for Enlighten 0. because Enlightenment's still a really cool project.
Yeah,
Enlightenment is a cool project.
Here's the thing: if I want to release a community edition, I'm no longer shipping any desktop environments. That's it. XFCE GNOME and KDE are the only ones. But if I were to release a third and final one, I would want a window manager. And if it's going to be a window manager for me, for the Unix porn guy, as you call me, it's going to be something that resembles Hyperland, but not a Wayland one.
Oh, so it's going to be BSPWM.
If I can integrate animations like Hyperland, why not?
I mean,
As somebody that's been living in BSPWM kind of on the down low for the last month, revisiting it kind of, I may make some videos about my experiences here, but I can say BSPWM, it's a nice little tiling window manager, but it has some quirks. It has some limitations that.
Well, let's just go to.
I don't know if BSPWM would ever be one I would recommend like to new tiling window manager users.
Let's go to Unix porn here. Let's just scroll down until we see the first window manager. i3WM. Well, of course it's i3. Let's see here. I don't know what GNOME is. I don't know what Yabai is. There's Qtile.
That's what Matt is using right now.
It used to be that the Unix porn was nothing but BSPWM screenshots. It was either BSPWM or it was
i3 and BSPWM were the most popular. Yeah. When I started my YouTube channel, it was all i3 and all BSPWM for tiling window managers. And then I started pushing all these dynamic tilers because I hate the manual tilers. I don't like i3 at all. BSPWM's okay. It's like, why is nobody using Awesome and Qtile and Xmonad? And then I get people to try it, and they're like, oh, yeah, dynamic tiling. This is so much better. Why did I ever fool with manual tiling? I was like, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, guys, dynamic is where you want to be.
Dynamic. I was thinking, why not Awesome?
Awesome is perfect because Awesome is actually a weird hybrid. It's a tiling window manager if you want it to be. But if you wanted it to be nothing but a floating window manager, it has that capability.
It's set up by default.
By default, it has a menu and a panel, and it's a floating window manager if you install it with no config.
And it has the different a button to switch between.
It has window decorations. They create their own window decorations using Lua, of course. It's all written in Lua. Yeah, it's got all of that. And depending on how deep you want to dive into learning Lua, and you can make Awesome into practically anything you can imagine. But that's a deep learning curve.
You know how far I will go? I would just copy somebody else's dot file.
That's what I do. Go to GitHub, search for Awesome.
Of course, after asking for permission,
change a couple colors.
That's what I do. I don't, and I modify them a little bit from what I understand. Change from Fahrenheit to centigrade, Celsius, and stuff like that. But other than that, I would just copy it.
Leviticus
Stack Overflow, baby. Stack Overflow.
Chat does also raise the point of Spectre WM, which is also a really nice dynamic window manager if you're new to window managers, because it's got that really simplified config, and they give you every single option that you can possibly have in the config files.
It's a straight up Xmonad clone that doesn't use Haskell. It uses a friendly syntax, kind of like i3 would use. So if you like the simplicity of configuring something like i3, but you want Xmonad, Spectrum's perfect.
Oh, guys, you confused me now. Now I had 2 or 3. Now I have 10 in my head.
There's also the venerable DWM.
Because I know what you want, Steve. Because I know you're looking for the maximum as far as rising abilities. Seriously, just start with Awesome. You're going to be able to do more with that than anything else as far as window managers.
I'm just gonna copy some dot files and mess around with them and see how it goes.
If you search for Awesome and Unix porn, you're going to see some things that will just blow your mind.
I was waiting for this to show up in the chat because now I see that there's somebody mentioning Hyperland. If you're a distribution, do not provide a Hyperland version, because even Arco Linux decided that they're going to fork Hyperland. That way they can control the package version rather than relying on the AUR package.
Yeah, it's beta software and it's under active development.
I wouldn't even say
so it's going to break.
I wouldn't even say it's beta. It's alpha.
Yeah, it's going to break all the time because there's so much change going on. It's constantly being worked on.
Ask someone who was maintaining the package from the AUR, the Git package from the AUR. 30 updates in one day.
Because people have asked me about that. Hey, why don't you look at Hyperland, configure it? Why don't you add it to DTOS? Because I know whatever config I come up with in a month is going to be completely borked. I'm going to have to rewrite it. I'm not looking for that kind of work.
When Hyperland makes a stable release, it is Unix porn by default, the window manager. So I'm cautiously watching that one.
Yeah, well, Hyperland is out of the question, especially for an NVIDIA guy like me. I know it works on NVIDIA. There's a package that makes it work on NVIDIA, but it's constantly moving. I cannot keep up with it.
There's a solution to this. Don't use the NVIDIA card.
Yeah. In the chat, Krishna was asking me, and I've had a lot of people ask me about Taffy Bar, which is a bar written in Haskell using GTK, and it's designed to be used with Xmonad. I have looked at it many times over many years because it's been around for a long time. It's not great, and it's kind of hard to work with. It's not something that's very new user friendly. In a lot of ways, Xmobar is a friendlier bar to work with. So I don't want to put people onto something, especially in my own configs, that I know they're going to hate or they're going to struggle with. Again, I don't like causing people heartache.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if it's something that I know has caused me problems, I'm not going to kill new users.
You hit the nail on the head. This is why I offer everything as optional on Zero Linux, because I don't want to deal with the heartache of enabling them by default. Like Bismuth, the Bismuth guy is dropping the project. He's looking for someone to take over, and he will not stop until somebody takes over.
Yeah, but that's the problem. Hey, nobody's going. A lot of these guys do that. Hey, look, I'm done with this. Can somebody please take over this project? And 9 times out of 10, nobody takes it over. Nobody's interested.
And I even suggested it to. I talked to Nicolo, and Nicolo, I suggested that why don't you take Bismuth under your wing? He was like, yeah, but it needs at least one active maintainer, so before we can take it under our wing. And since it doesn't have anyone right now, besides this guy waiting for someone to take over, they're not going to take it. But LatteDoc, they took it under their wing because they were in talks with the main developer, the Greek developer of LatteDoc, before he left the project. So with Qt6, Plasma 6, they might, he said, we might announce that LatteDoc will be part of the KDE family. An extension for KDE officially maintained by the KDE maintainer. Yeah, but he said might. He's not sure. It's still in the suggestion basket. Nobody took it yet, so that's why it's only seeing contributing code from time to time. But that's it. It's very. It's only the Git package that's being maintained. The main one is dead, long dead. Rest in peace.
I do want to switch topics briefly because I did want to ask Big Pod, what the hell's going on with Linus Tech Tips, and why can't they secure their passwords?
It wasn't a password thing, actually.
Yeah, I can talk about this.
Well, I know Big Pod's been following it, so.
What happened there? I recommend watching their video. It will be a lot better told than what I can tell. But
no, too much time wasted watching videos. I can just ask you, Big Pod.
Basically, they got session hijacked. Somebody opened an email that had an attachment that looked proper for a business opportunity, so a sponsor spot.
This is the same thing that happened to the guy that lost all the crypto. What, $95 million worth? We talked about this he opened a PDF where he was being offered a job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, I have accepted and declined job offers where like the only way that they would actually send you like anything official was in a PDF, and I guess it kind of makes sense. The issue is that, of course, I think they had an antivirus tool, but the antivirus tool said that the file was too big for it to scan. You're like,
wow,
what?
Wow, and he still opened it.
Yeah, and they still opened
That's
it.
crazy. Because if it's too big to scan, that's not a PDF, right?
How about pictures?
I mean,
It's a sponsor deck.
there are some big PDFs that places will send you.
Yeah,
No.
sponsor decks that have
Like,
lots of pictures.
If you're signing a document that needs something like that, you need to
I-
use like DocuSign.
When
DocuSign,
I
yeah.
worked for Honda of America outside of Marysville, Ohio, so like their primary factory, I would get shipping manifest in a PDF document, and that PDF document would be 1.5 gigabytes in size.
Oh.
I don't doubt it.
Wasn't there a problem with LastPass recently? Somebody tried to hack it.
There
Yeah.
was,
And
they,
Bitwarden had issues too, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've all had issues recently.
Skepticism about those.
But
but
I'm gonna say this
it
way.
was not. It was a session hijacked. It was nothing that LastPass would actually be responsible for.
Right.
Yeah.
This was a user error. As soon as you click on the file, I mean, you've boogered it up at that point.
As far as they told 30 seconds, and hackers had everything they needed to hijack their basically channel.
Yeah.
I would put if I do any kind of content creation, if I work from home, I use a separate computer just for that. Better yet, just put a separate computer on a separate network.
Yeah. I would actually, if I was opening a very large attachment, like a PDF, that I was like, especially a job offer, you wouldn't think it'd be that many pages. Open that in a VM. Just create a virtual machine and open it in a VM, because I don't trust it. Right.
Well, the funny thing is that the virtualization stack on Windows is actually kind of sort of messed up, especially
It's compromised.
Yep. Well, it depends if the user account that you're using to run the VM is an administrator or not.
Yeah.
What about a live USB stick? I'm going to keep going down this road. Could I open it on a live USB stick?
You're probably safe then. That said, it also depends if you're using a web browser to look at that email or if you're using a client. Because if you're using a web browser, you're probably logged into the same Google account that has access to all the YouTube things too.
Well, that's a problem if you're using Gmail. I mean, then all your
they use Gmail at Linus Tech Tips.
yeah, because all your Google accounts are tied to the same. Yeah.
Yeah, their business team uses Gmail as the email client for some unknown reason, even though they use Office 365 for everything else.
No, as far as I know, they use Workspace for email, all that.
Well, they pay an Office 365 subscription at least because they do use Microsoft Teams.
Yeah, of course. Well, at the end of the day, obviously that's a big target, which is probably why this guy was targeted with this fake job offer.
I guarantee you, the hacker just blindly sent the email, didn't even send out like 1,000 emails.
No, he was targeted. He was targeted.
With Linus Tech Tips, this was a targeted attack, at least targeted at YouTubers.
Well, yeah, he was targeting YouTubers.
Spot.
He was targeting YouTubers with fake sponsorship offers, and I guarantee you he had a field day because he just hit the fucking gold mine.
Yeah, that's true.
That guy that stole that $90-something million worth of crypto a few months ago with the fake job offer in a PDF, that was a team that had worked 3 months on this guy to get him to finally accept the job offer and then send him the PDF to get him to open the PDF.
Yeah, that's a little bit more intentional. That said,
so when you're a big target, trust me, they're gonna put in the work.
Yeah.
They're gonna.
It's when you're a target and you have a determined attacker, you're gonna fall.
Mm-hmm.
Simple as that.
Yeah,
and all it took was
the harder, the easier they fall.
Because think about it, you work for Linus, and somebody sends you email. Hey, I know you're currently doing this for Linus. I'm going to pay you 3 times as much as what he's paying you to do the same job. You going to open the PDF? Hell yeah, you're going to open the PDF. Why wouldn't you? Right?
And in case of Linus, it was actually a sponsor spot, a business person who manages that stuff. Of course, they're going to open a PDF about a sponsorship spot on the thing they're trying to manage. It's their job to do so.
Yeah, and DJ in the chat says stop opening effing PDFs. Well,
you have to. That's a standard. That's how they send you a deck about what they're offering you as a
Yeah.
basically what kind of money they're offering you, what you need to do.
Yeah,
That's all written inside a PDF,
And there's no way,
all about what you need to do.
and there's no way to secure email because it's such an old protocol. It predates the web. Email's been around longer than the World Wide Web existed, and they never had security in mind when they designed the protocol. So it's always going to be wide open. People are going to send you malware and things like that and an attachment, and if you open it, that's on you. If you open it, that's on you. You better have good antivirus, or you've better have taken some kind of measures just in case.
Better yet, if you have demand, just have a bunch of email aliases. I have I have 300 email aliases for my own domain name, and I don't get any phishing emails. But the only the emails that I get claim to be from McAfee, but I don't have McAfee in my system.
Yeah, I get the
There you
same
go.
ones. I get the same ones. Hey, your Windows McAfee subscription is out of date. And I'm like, dude, I don't even run Windows. What the hell is this?
The funny thing is that because I've done some consulting, I know that McAfee does actually make a client for Linux. And I actually do help administrate a server that runs McAfee on Linux. It also depends
Windows,
entirely on what email that they send that to.
Microsoft Defender has a Windows version.
Yeah, it does.
Linux version, I mean.
A Linux version, yeah. There's actually a few proprietary antivirus products available for Linux. There's actually several last time I looked.
They have a site-wide antivirus. You probably want to have a Linux version to host on a server. That's why it exists. Because
I imagine people use them because, like I said, there's several of these big proprietary antivirus products on Linux. So I imagine that somebody's using them. Because why would you bother creating this Linux client and selling it if you weren't making money with it? So I've never personally met anybody that said they were using them, though. I don't know if you guys have seen that in the Linux space. Anybody?
Probably companies.
Yeah.
That's
I guess maybe
target.
if you had dual machines, like if you had Windows servers and Linux servers, maybe it would make sense.
Oh, it makes sense if you have Linux servers only. But you have site-wide antivirus. That's antivirus that basically runs on your server that covers every device, whether you have Windows, Linux. That's for that as having it on a Linux server makes sense. And if you have that license and you switch to infrastructure being on Linux, of course you're gonna use that license still.
Yeah, if you already paid for it, why not?
Yeah.
Yeah, Pickles in the chat. There's such a large market there for the enterprise world, I feel. Yeah, I mean, that would probably be why. I'm sure Microsoft probably makes a lot of money off of Linux these days. Probably a lot more than we all realize.
They probably do.
Yep.
I mean, Azure runs Linux.
Well, yeah, obviously, yeah.
VMs.
VMs.
Let's be clear, just VMs. On hardware, there is Windows, but then on top of that, there are VMs which are Linux.
Right.
Whoa, I like the Thunar extended. It there's a git in the context menu. You just right click git clone and you just enter the URL and it will clone. You don't need to open terminal.
Yeah, I like that. I like that because I'm always cloning stuff from GitHub or GitLab.
Thunar extended on the AUR.
Yeah. I don't mind having those context menus being filled with interesting things, especially if I can customize it to do the commands I want them to run.
Yeah. So it's super neat. There are some neat packages I just discovered for Thunar. Not bad. Not bad. I wish KDE had that functionality now.
It probably does as an extension. I bet there's probably
there is a Git extension for Dolphin, but doesn't do that. What it does is it shows you if your repository is synced with upstream by displaying green check marks. If there's a difference between the upstream and the downstream, it shows a orange exclamation mark on the files that are different.
I would like to grow my neck beard here, because what I do is I right click copy link and then I open terminal and I type in git clone and
clone
down the repository like that.
Okay, Josh.
Well, depending on where you're doing this, I mean, both GitHub and GitLab have the neat little feature where it's got the button copy link. You just click on it.
Yep, that's what I do.
But it's neat. I just discovered something that is very helpful.
Yeah.
So Mozilla, I don't want config.
I wonder if PC Man FM has something like that.
There is. I mentioned.
I'm going to write that down because I'm going to look for that later because that would be useful.
But
let me open up my little notes.
Speaking of file managers, I was like the other day I was looking for a better file manager than Thunar because Thunar is really ugly. No matter how much you theme it, it still looks ugly. There was one that I found, and here's the caveat with that one. It gives you the base. Then when you see in the context menus all these beautiful little features, but in order to use them, you have to pay the developer, or as he says, donate to the project to enable these features. You can't use them unless you donate. They're behind the donation wall. So I'm like,
okay,
that's kind of weird when it comes to Linux, because the features like Git, it has one that allows, you know how on macOS you highlight a video file, then you hit space on your keyboard, it will play the video in the file manager.
In the file manager?
Yeah, but in a bigger thumbnail size. He has that in the file manager, but in order to use it, you have to pay.
No, I mean, I have no problem with people charging for software. I mean,
how about Intel charging for CPU features on it?
Oh, no, yeah, that's different.
That's... Because you had to pay for the CPU anyway. I mean, it's like, if I'm paying for your hardware, you can't then say, hey, you want the software to make the CPU work? Well,
automobile manufacturers, one of them, I think it was Toyota, was charging for an automatic door unlocker, charging you $2 a month.
Now this is double dipping. This isn't the same thing. This is people trying to double dip, charge people twice for the same thing that they've already purchased. That's not the same thing. But somebody selling a piece of software, even if it's free and open source software, anybody can charge for software. That's not a problem. I mean, hey, if somebody says, hey, I deserve this payment for this time I put in the code, hey, fine.
Well, on one hand, I understand why Intel did it. I understand the business case. Let's be clear.
Yeah.
I understand why.
Well, I understand why they did it. They're greedy, you know, as far as the double dipping. Yeah, I understand why they do it.
Why they wanted to make it and what they thought the appeal to users would be. It's enterprise, first of all. So, yeah, money gets thrown around like it's, well, leaves.
I think there was.
But reality is they want to make it cheaper. But
these companies want these subscriptions. They think they're going to make these subscription services for things that don't need it, like your car. Like, oh, you got to pay me extra money for this functionality in your car. Like, no, why don't I pay for everything up front and be done?
Yeah, I think it was Mazda.
They were accelerators.
Mazda had
added to those CPUs.
Mazda had a problem with their system, that PBS radio or something. They did an update, and all you could do was listen to the one PBS station. Your rear camera wouldn't work, nothing else would work, and it was their fault, but you had to pay $1,300 and take it back to the dealer to get it fixed.
Yeah.
I also had an issue where, like, if you played a certain podcast, your radio would screw up too.
Yeah, a lot of car makers are like that. I saw a story the other day. I didn't read it, but I was reading the headline. But Rivian, an electric vehicle manufacturer, somebody had been waiting on one of their vehicles for a long time. It finally got delivered to him after a couple of weeks. Car died, quit working. He had to pay $2,000 to ship the car back to Rivian. I was like, wait, what? You had to pay to ship your broken car? Like, what? like these people are getting played. Like,
That's actually standard to pay for shipping of vehicles.
yeah, I mean, this is the kind of thing that, I mean, I'd have to talk to a lawyer about. If, I buy a car, it's still under warranty, and the thing breaks, and I have to pay to ship it back to you. It's like, hell no.
Question, guys. Anyone know anything about PyCom?
Yeah.
I know it's a compositor, but I'm trying to use it. I'm trying to use it inside a VM on XFCE. It shows an error, a red error file, error message.
Does it tell you what the error is?
Failed to create picture X error 8 match request 139 minor 44 serial 2334. I think it does. It has an issue with VMs.
You could try a different video driver, just to eliminate that possibility.
Because I'm running it in KVM. QMU.
Yeah. So.
You mean
if you were using like QXL, for example, maybe try VirtIO for the driver and see if that.
Yeah, I use VirtIO by default. But
I can tell you, PyCom works for me, and no matter the driver and all, because I do a lot of testing with tiling window managers. All my tiling window managers configs use PyCom. I've never had a problem with PyCom in a VM, so could be a broken config.
Yeah. I'm just playing around with XFCE right now. I'm just creating a rice using the Dracula theme.
Yeah. I mean, think about all those Arco Linux versions of window managers. They all use PyCom. They all work. I've never had
Okay. I'm going to install Tin2 panel in a bit, but I'm multitasking. I'm enjoying you guys and working on XFCE.
I'm playing on kernel, so.
Now, I've been refactoring a lot of code for some of my projects here in the last few days. I've got some big things planned here in the next few days, which I'll make some videos about some of what I've been working on.
Gingered in chat brings up an interesting point. What is going on with Solus right now?
People have been asking that for about 3 years, though, with Solus.
Well, it's been the last 3 years, but specifically the last 2 months, they have not had a single package update in their repositories.
Because nobody's working on the project.
Well, what it is that their packaging server went down, and there has been nobody from the development team that has been able to pick it up since. This is after a solid month and a half stint where their primary web page was actually down.
I haven't done a video about Solus.
I think
many years.
Last time you did a video on Solus was when they released their version, which if you look at that version timestamp, that was 2021, so about 2 years ago.
And the reason I just quit talking about it is I don't want people to go use Solus if you're new to Linux. It's because I don't think, the project is probably a dead project. It's not technically a dead project. There's people working on it, but let's be real. The lead maintainer of Solus, the original guy that created it, left 3-4 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's never been the same. Their repositories, I've always complained, even though I like Budgie, the desktop environment they created, and I like a lot of what they do, the software repository for Solus is probably the worst one on Linux as far as lacking all the software.
It is definitely the smallest.
Yes, by far. There is a ton of very popular programs that are on every single Linux distribution on the planet, but Solus. And it's and that's troubling. That's a signal that
for a while there they weren't even packaging Vim or Nano.
Yeah, it's really troubling. I would never tell a new user, hey, go try out Solus. It's great, because I would be irresponsible if I told somebody that, and then in 6 months from now, Solus officially dies and they close up shop. And then it's DT told me to. No, I don't. I'm not going to tell people.
I never really faulted Solus for being picky about what packages that they ship, because I understand that as a distro maintainer, you only have so much time to actually maintain packages versus maintain the distribution. And honestly, it makes sense for them to take the time to curate the packages. The issue that I have is that there's no communication whatsoever from that development team, and there's been barely any communication from them for the past 4 years or so now. And honestly, like even before like this whole mess with them started in the last 6 months, I was never really appreciative because they run a rolling release model, but they would only release an ISO, an updated ISO when they actually make progress on their release model.
And I want to say this because of the statements I just made about the repositories being small and it's probably going to be a dead project. I in no way want to imply that the people running Solus are bad people or whatever. They were set up for failure when the guy that created Solus just walked away one day. He's the one that screwed the project.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, he's working on another distribution project now too.
Yeah.
So
the same thing happened to Void Linux at the almost exact same time, where the lead maintainer of Void Linux literally disappeared. He didn't tell anybody who was leaving, and they didn't hear from him for almost a year. They didn't know if he was dead or alive.
Yeah.
And they were seriously concerned because this guy, he had all the keys. Like, they didn't know if they could maintain the distro without him. And he finally came back. I don't know if he was back permanently, but he came back and said, hey, I'm alive. Yeah. But at least he came back to at least kind of, hey, he's like, let me help you make the transition to Void Linux after me. And Void Linux is doing all right, but Solus never recovered from when Ike left that project.
Yep. Well, projects, this is why something like community editions exist, like spins and community editions. Those have a stamp on them that says, we don't know how long it's going to live. Don't expect it to live long. Right. Flagship releases should be considered as long-term projects.
We should talk about this because I did make a video about it, and I was actually going to bring it up. I'm glad we ended up talking about Solus because my video was not about Solus the other day, but I talked about, most brand new distributions kind of suck was the thumbnail. And I talked about why, like, brand new distributions that just appear, they just had a first release, why I usually don't do those on camera and showcase people, those kinds of distributions, because most of them literally never see a second release.
Yeah.
I see this all the time because I get recommended so many new distributions. Most of them never see a second release. And I'd say 95% of them, they're not here in a year. So why would I put in this work to showcase this video on this distribution that I know a year from now, that distribution's not going to exist anymore? My video would be pointless. All the people I put on the distribution, told them to go try it out, be mad at me.
I mean, you've done that for them too before. Where you covered a distro that just had its very first release and
then it's gone.
Yeah, then it's gone.
And then it's gone. And because I've had people, and people will complain to me sometimes, and I'll be like, you know what? You're right. I screwed up. I shouldn't have told you about that distribution because, they put an ISO on GitHub, and that's the only ISO they ever put out. It's 4 years old now or whatever.
Yep.
And I mentioned a desktop environment. There was a brand new desktop environment that was all the latest rage. Every time these new desktop environments, new window managers crop up, I get recommended all of them. I never showcase them as long as I think they're kind of alpha quality or beta quality. We talked about Hyperland recently, which Hyperland sees a lot of development. It'll probably be all right. But there was a desktop environment everybody was making videos about a year and a half ago. It was something weird. UKUI or something.
Or whatever.
Yeah,
I think Fedora is maintaining it now, if I remember right.
But like everybody made videos about that desktop environment. It's like, I'm going to hold off on that one because I don't know about that. And literally like 6 months after everybody made all those videos about it, it was abandoned. It was unmaintained. It's been unmaintained. But you say Fedora might take it up. But I was like, man, I'm glad I didn't put that on video because I don't want people using something that was half-ass built quickly. And then, Cutefish is another one. Johan. Yeah, Cutefish was the one I was actually thinking about.
Oh, yeah, because
Cutefish is abandoned.
Is the one that Chinese Ubuntu uses.
UKUI is the Chinese one. Cutefish is actually the one I was actually thinking about.
So I've been using New Shell for the past 2 weeks on it, and it's
I've played a little bit with New Shell. We talked about this last time, Murray. I need to do another video on some of the new
looking pretty
stuff.
good. I've been ignoring
is.
it most for 3.5 years. Now and then a
'Cause
little peak, but it's looking really good right now on it.
But I just it's become so good the way it can filter out all that table data
Yeah, but
and like the standard utils, and it's just
it's cross-platform, so it works on Windows, Mac, and Linux. It's about 450 built-in functions right now. If it doesn't find a built-in function, it'll look for an external thing. So you can do all your greps and your finds and pipe it into awk and xargs. You can do all of that with it, just like you would in Bash.
but it has all those built-in commands, like the sort commands and things like that, where it kind of pulls out all that information from the table data anyway.
And the scripting language is a functional language, but they've added a return statement. They've got the early return in there, so which I missed in Elixir, and they've got mutable variables in functions. So it just only locally in functions, but it gets around a lot of problems you have with the functional language where the variables are not mutable on it.
No.
The thing I really like about it most is the way it handles spaces in arguments, right? If you got a file name with spaces in Linux, I've got one thing I worked with last night. I had to say, is $1 contain a space? Then double quote, put quotes around $1. Do the same for $2, $9, and then use it through there. That's all gone now. You don't have to worry about whether arguments have spaces or not. And
so you don't have to escape them like you would in Bash, for example, or
yeah, Bash is terrible.
Yeah.
So I'm leaving Bash.
Bash is terrible.
Well, the language itself is
the scripting language. Bash it's confusing.
It's better than POSIX shell.
Yeah, it is.
The sed stuff and awk you can xarg you can work with, but those if statements and the error handling's better in New Shell. It has a try catch in there. And
is it actually documented on like Fish?
Yeah,
it has documentation.
The help system. If you do help command, whatever the command is, it's perfect. They always give examples, and they give it.
Yeah, I can actually
get 5 examples.
For those watching the YouTube chat, I will show you a little bit what he's talking about. Yeah. Let me switch to the desktop view here.
And the error messages are excellent. They're concise, and they point out exactly. If the file doesn't exist, it will tell you the file doesn't exist and highlight.
I'm going to make a full screen terminal. This is the New Shell. So like LS, this is like a almost PowerShell-like table data where you have things where you could like sort out certain of the columns. But if you didn't know what the sort function he's talking about was doing, you could do help sort, and the New Shell will actually give you a demonstration of exactly. And this is good documentation. Like this is nice. Like, this is perfect. Very well done.
Yeah. And the thing is that it's a compiled language actually. So if you have a function, it compiles the function. So it's on the fly, I would gather, but it's fast. You can't do things like build a command at runtime like use eval that you can with Bash or Python because of that. And it doesn't have batch jobs like an ampersand at the end. That's not built into the system either.
Yeah, I need to revisit New Shell on camera because the last video I made about it was so long ago. There's so much stuff that's been
It's entirely different now. And the other
matter of fact, it's so good now. I really should add New Shell as an option with my DTOS script in case.
I'm making it my shell. It won't.
That's what I'm thinking about.
The only limitation is it can't execute Bash functions. If you have a Bash function and you type it in, it won't do it. But I've got a workaround on it. So
if you prepend the command with something like you can't prepend the command with Bash,
I'll tell you what, if I can figure out how to set New Shell to be my default shell on Fedora Silverblue, then I will also use it.
I think it's the standard way.
You can't just run the change shell command, CHSH?
It doesn't seem to be in the repository.
Oh, you have to install a package on some distributions. I think Ubuntu's the same way. I don't think Change
Cargo
Shell is on it by
install
default.
New Shell is the way I did it. You can install
That was
Cargo,
Argus Zero Blue.
and you can,
New Shell is NU, Amonte in the chat, NUSHELL. But when you run New Shell in the terminal, just type NU. So it's
it's a single binary,
let's
but
see.
and you can use static X to make it a static binary instead of dynamic, so you can use the one binary across distros on it, which is what I did.
Let's see.
it's
We're
Rust.
searching repositories here to see if there's anything in here. Oh my goodness! I just found that there's a copper repo.
And it's also easy to, like, you have the string command, str space subcommand. You can add your own very easily. I added str space dedupe to get rid of duplicate blanks in a string, and it's a snap to do it. It's no, it's a lot easier than subclassing in Python, for instance, like that. So they've done a really good job on this. And it's on version 77. Version 80, which is in about 2 months, is a major release. It's a huge release on it. The last time they had a version 60, the similar release, they took the binary size from 45 megabytes down to 17 megabytes and added a bunch of new features at the same time. So we're probably looking at something like that as well on version 80 in about 2 months. So, yeah, but the best thing I've found is that getting rid of those spaces problems with the files and the arguments in there. That's such a relief not to have to worry about that anymore.
Yeah. In the chat, Amonte is asking me, do I recommend New Shell? As far as your user shell, yeah, it's fine. Your system shell on Linux always needs to be bash because bash scripts are a part of the fundamental Linux system. You have to have bash. But as far as your user shell, it can be anything you want. It can be New Shell or Fish or ZSH or Conch or whatever shell you want to run, the C shell, which I wouldn't recommend. But
if you're in New Shell, you can just type bash. It'll go into bash. You do what you want there and hit exit, and you're back where you left off in New Shell.
And that's what I do in Fish. All my terminals open Fish by default. But when I'm scripting, I type bash to get into a bash shell, do my scripting, and then at the end, exit, and I'm back in Fish.
Perfect. Yeah. So that's pretty good. So I've got a long way to go yet, but I'm still usable. Spent 2 weeks on it, and I can work with it now, at least. Mm-hmm. Oh, and the other thing is there's variable naming cases. There's snake case where you have an underscore. There's camel case where you use capital letters, and there's Derek's favorite one, which is kebab case. Yeah, with a hyphen in there. And it's an actual thing. You can do a Google define kebab case, and it's in there.
Although that doesn't look like kebab at all. So
it has the dash in there, so you think of the letters swirling around like on a spit.
I don't mind if you use dashes or underscores as long as you don't use them both. That's confusing.
But there's also a screaming camel case, which is a real thing as well, and that's capital letters instead of lowercase letters. But that's the thing, because in Python they use camel case and constants are uppercase. So if you have run underscore mode as a constant, you would use screaming camel case for that. So just odd as names there. Anyway, just thought I'd mention.
Very, very cool stuff. Yeah, I'm eventually going to add New Shell as an option for the default user shell on DTOS if people want it. I think it's ready. Like it's not beta software like it was when I first tried it 3-4 years ago. Like it's really good stuff now.
And the other thing is, if you write a function where you want to use it in a pipe for standard in and standard out, it's really easy because the variable $in has your standard in. You don't even have to declare it. You just start using it in your function, and you've got your standard input there. So it makes things a lot easier on it.
Yeah.
Very good.
And one interesting little command line tool that I did a video about just a couple of days ago was a Fuzzy Finder. Do any of you guys ever use FZF? because it's one of those things I see people that tell me they use it all the time or whatever.
I
and
used
I've
to.
had, yeah.
And then I learned how to use the find command.
You know, that's a part of the thing is I do so much with just the standard core utils. I mentioned this the other day on camera. I never use a file manager. Ever. Like, it's really strange when I open a file manager. Because it's like, I don't play with them that often.
I live in one. I've got the
Yeah.
Crusader dual panel, and I've got buttons at the top that select functions like do an rsync from the left to the right. And
I live in Dolphin, so.
I live in a browser.
The only advantage really for me to a GUI file manager, like when I open one, is all the good file managers have tabs. So I could have multiple tabs open in the GUI file manager.
Most of the time, whenever I'm looking in a GUI file manager, I'm just looking for stuff.
Yeah,
I'm not
exactly. If I actually want to do a move or a copy or a delete or anything, I'm typing that in a terminal anyway.
Yeah, I
so.
just right click and I select open in terminal.
Plus, a lot of times you're wanting to do complicated moves or renames that you would have to do at a terminal anyway. The GUI file manager wouldn't be capable of some of what you're trying to accomplish. So,
well, I've got one there. I select a file on the left-hand side that say a zip file, and I have a button on the top, and it says unpack, and it will unpack it to the folder on the right-hand side, and it'll handle just about any of the package formats on it. So I can do a lot of things like that without having to use a keyboard, which is what you like to do.
That said, there's this project I've been tracking where it's basically a desktop environment and terminal, and I figured out how I can implement that into a Void MK Live script. So when I eventually come out with Josh OS, that's going to be what I'm going to be shipping. So you can do everything in the terminal to begin with.
yeah.
Okay.
Problem is, Josh OS would just be compiling constantly.
It would be.
Yeah.
Josh, how do I get to the settings of Tin2?
I think it's
There's a config file.
it's a config file.
There is settings. I think
No,
don't think-
because it opened up a dialogue where I could select different themes earlier, but now I don't know how to.
Oh,
get
yeah, it
back.
does have built-in themes. If you don't have your own config, I think it does ship with some predefined.
You know, I have my themes. I put them in there, but earlier
Yeah.
it opened up a GUI where I could select and preview the themes.
Yeah, it'll give you a
but
preview window.
I don't know how to get it back.
let me find it for you.
I have Tent2 installed on my system. I don't know if I have the little Tent2 conf. Is that it? Let me hit enter and see if that's it. It is.
What do you?
Tent2 conf.
I have to type it in terminal.
Yeah.
If it's not in your menu system, yeah, you would have to run it with a run launcher, or you don't have to open it in a terminal, but you could, I guess.
Tin2 settings. I found it. Okay.
But
Because
yeah, the command is Tent2 conf, all one word.
Yeah, I installed the Arco Linux themes. I found them on the GitHub. So I'm checking, but none of them has the tray from what I see.
Yeah, there's a sys tray. Oh, they may not show it in the pictures, but there is a sys tray module you can add to the config. I've got it in my Tent2 config. If you go to my dot files, you can see the portion.
And not unsurprisingly enough, they're almost all Arco Linux's themes are using ArcDark.
Yeah.
Yeah, because ArcDark is honestly the best theme on Linux, and everybody should just be using ArcDark.
I haven't played with Tent2 in so long, but I do have my config.
Let me see that one.
I could post it in the chat here, in the Jitsi chat for you guys.
Okay, let me see.
But there is a section sys tray, and you can see where I set padding and all of that for the sys tray. So you can add a sys tray section to Tent2 if you want it. And you can place it anywhere on the bar.
By default, it has a sys tray in it.
It should by default, yeah. Because that would be weird if it didn't have it by default.
No, it doesn't. For some reason, it doesn't.
Well,
it just shows the application launcher a clock.
I also
and the
haven't used
workspace.
Tent2 in like 10 years, just like OpenBox, so it's been a while.
Yeah. I mean, that's the only time I ever use it is when I log into my OpenBox session, which I log into OpenBox these days, like twice a year maybe, just to see if it still works.
Oh no, no.
Does anyone use the Intel or know about the Intel Arc graphics processor?
I'm using one right now.
You are. Well, how much did it cost?
It cost me $280 for an A770. Then they jumped the price up $30.
Yeah, they say it's good for desktop stuff, but not for games yet. But it's not. It's a budget, so
I'm playing games.
You playing games with it?
I'm playing games,
and it's easier. You don't have any NVIDIA driver problems.
No, because all I did was just install Fedora 38, and it works.
Yeah, that's what they're saying.
Now, one thing, getting back to AMD and NVIDIA on Linux, I will say the gaming experience with NVIDIA on Linux is fine. I've got no problems with that.
The only issue with NVIDIA is just managing the driver, and that's
it. That's the only problem. Like when I launch Steam and play a game, it's a beautiful experience. I've got no issues with any of that.
By image-based operating systems are the best. I let CI/CD take care of that. All I do is update.
The only reason why I would use NVIDIA is when it comes to using Blender.
Yeah.
On Gen 2, Portage just automatically signs the kernel for me, so it works.
Well, if I don't have a need for CUDA or NVIDIA's decoder, I would have gone back to AMD because when it comes to GNOME magnifier, it can be very sluggish when zoomed in.
And I'm glad you brought up NVIDIA and CUDA, because that's another thing, getting back to what Dark Zero brought up near the beginning of the stream with NVIDIA, some of the issues with newer users, because I get these questions a lot about NVIDIA. What do I need to install to get the drivers? Not the Nouveau drivers, the proprietary drivers. You got the NVIDIA package, or you got the NVIDIA-LTS package if you're using the LTS kernel. But then if you want CUDA, CUDA's a separate package. I mean, you got separate packages for all this NVIDIA stuff. And sometimes that's confusing for the new user. They don't know what to install for.
You just go to wiki.archlinux.org.
Oh, I can point them to the Arch Wiki, but you know how new users are, Josh. You can't just RTF them or RTFM them.
Nope.
Well, at the end of the day, we should remember NVIDIA first and foremost caters to data center usage and all that. So it makes sense that you would want to have separate CUDA from standard OpenGL.
It is, and I'm not blaming necessarily NVIDIA for having everything as far as all the technology for their cards being packaged as different things. That makes sense. But I think some of especially the bigger Linux distributions, don't do a good enough job of making some of this stuff accessible to its users.
Yeah,
so many people have questions about CUDA on Linux. Like, why are we not making the documentation for this more readily available, or just eliminating the need for the documentation, like making it a one-button click install and boom, it's done.
On some distributions, it basically is a one button.
Yeah, I mean, you've got distributions like Ubuntu that make these things really simple, but most distributions actually don't.
I have a one command install and I have NVIDIA, whatever I want. But then again, I'm using Fedora Silverblue with my own image, so...
What we need is BigPod's little script. We all need to start pushing that anytime anybody on Linux wants NVIDIA. Hey, go run BigPod's script.
It's not my script.
Line.
It's not my script. For that, I have to thank other contributors to it. I'm just part of a team.
You're so humble, BigPod. I would have taken credit for that if I were you.
No, I'm really just a small part of the team. There are much more important members.
That's your job at SpaceX?
No. This is a community project we are couple of us are doing. uBlue. Check it out. We make images for all sorts of things, for Fedora Silverblue. You can find one for just standard desktop environments. Each of them have an NVIDIA version. You have a couple of custom-made, pre-made environments. Like there is Bluefin, which is
I see this one that's just called NVIDIA. I wonder if it's just Silverblue with pre-configured NVIDIA.
sure. I think it is. This
Probably
is a repo.
What's the worst that can happen, right?
Probably looking on the GitHub, and there is a repo for NVIDIA. Yeah, it builds, I believe, like 30 images with different versions of drivers.
You know, along the same lines, I see an interesting question in the chat, and I'm not sure about this answer. Sweaty Zombie was asking, does anybody know of an application in Linux for limiting the FPS for your NVIDIA card? Anybody know how to limit FPS?
It's G-Sync. I know that much.
Okay.
Why isn't it working?
So I'm not sure on
It's
that.
G-Sync and your monitor refresh rate.
Yeah.
But which should be limited by the hardware of your monitor anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to do it. I said I wouldn't RTFM anybody, but I was like, you could go read the NVIDIA section of the Arch Wiki, but I don't know. I really don't know how to do that.
I don't know.
Not something I've ever thought about.
I let my system do it using either G-Sync, FreeSync, VSync, whichever one works.
Josh, do you still have your cluster of 10 Raspberry Pis? Didn't you have one? Was that you?
I don't have a cluster of 10 Raspberry Pis. I have a cluster of 20 Raspberry Pi 2s.
Uh-huh. And with Gen 2?
Yes.
They're all compiling Gen 2. That's why he has 20.
Actually, they only compile Gen 2 about once every 3 months because it's an offline system.
What do you use them for?
They just run ESP sensors and tell me what the temperature and moisture levels and nitrogen levels are out in our farm fields. There is some calce involved, yes, because it pipes calce into a figlet, which gives me a nice little title bar and a text file, and then they dial into my self-hosted dial-up server, and they just rsync a file over. And,
well, you know, 20 Raspberry Pi 2s would probably compile Gen 2 in about the same time as like a 15-year-old ThinkPad would.
It's about a 2.5 day job for a kernel.
Yeah, that's what I would be thinking.
That said, they're also communicating to each other through a 56K modem, so it's not the world's fastest communication.
Yeah, that's the pipeline. That's the bottleneck there.
If you're asking why, the answer is because I literally own the phone lines for it. That's why.
Okay, DG, your Tin2 config did not work. It just gave me an empty panel for some reason. I don't get it.
Run Tin2 from the terminal and see if it gives.
Yeah, it'll probably give you an error. Could be a font that was in my config.
It's either a font or some dependency that he's calling.
Because it works on my machine, so I know the config.
It works on my machine, so it works.
Yeah, I mean, I know it works, but what it's going to be is something, probably a font, or I'm trying to call I know what it is. I've got some custom icons too that also are in my config that exist on my machine, won't exist on yours.
Okay. Because
it definitely is something that's much I can tell you.
Because I use
the terminal will tell you exactly what it is, but that's going to be what it is. I've got some assets locally on my machine that you're not going to have on yours.
Yeah,
I'm putting in that.
I applied it using the Tin2 panel settings.
If you go to my GitLab, though, I think if you go to my dot files and .config/tint2, don't just grab my tint2 config like I posted the link just to the config. Get everything in that folder because I think I have some image files and things like that.
Everything inside the .config?
I think. I haven't looked, again, I haven't looked at it in a long time, but just copy the whole folder.
Yeah, I think I'm going to do that. But I'm still hunting on GitHub for some good ones. There's one that looks good, but there are missing icons. So I need to fix that.
Yeah, I've got that folder called launchers that has those .desktop files. Those are quick launchers that appear in the bar. So that is probably going to be the problem.
Yeah. I'll have to mess with it. This is a rabbit hole that needs time.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure
Well,
you'll work it out.
Tin2 panel looks a little bit better than Polybar.
I mean, it's a standard panel. I mean, you can theme it.
There's
change the colors and everything. Add quick launchers if you want them, or not if you don't want them. It's got a taskbar that you can play with the colors. You can have icons appear outside the window name on the taskbar or not. Like you can do all the standard stuff.
What I like about it is in the settings, the Tin2 settings thing, I can open that whatever theme I want, and I can mess with it using a GUI. Not only I don't need to mess with a config file; it will generate that config file once I'm done with the GUI.
Mm-hmm.
So I do better with GUI than with config files. So that's a positive.
Well, the good thing with the Tint2 config is even if you've got a lot going on in your Tint2 config, it's still not a very big file. Like there's really not a lot to it. It's really easy to wrap your head around it. Where Polybar is confusing as hell.
Yeah, that's and. Like I said, having a GUI settings dialog, that helps a lot.
Well, we're coming up on about 10 minutes till the end of the 2-hour stream. We've got several people here on the video chat. So why don't we all take a minute or two and give us a last word or a last thought. Josh, you got anything you want to leave us with?
Well, you see, my goal was to have like a basic install of Gen 2 done on this little laptop by then, because it's running a 12th gen Intel and such, and it's been stuck compiling this kernel for the longest time. So I really don't have anything to say right now.
Yeah, it should have compiled the kernel in that amount of time.
It should.
As long as something's wrong.
It hasn't errored yet, so I'm just letting it go.
Yeah, because I can compile the big kernel on this machine in like 40 minutes. Like I don't know what your problem is.
I don't know.
Shoulda, coulda, woulda.
I can tell you that I haven't really heard the fan kick on it at all, so it's probably thermal throttling.
No. I'm sure you'll get that worked out.
I'm sure.
Thanks for hanging out with us, Josh.
Not a problem.
Steve, Dark Zero, give us the last word, sir.
Please, if you're not ready to do a lot of tinkering and nerding out, stick to Windows.
Yeah. And I know this live stream especially, this probably seemed like a negative live stream because we complained a lot about
We
problems.
didn't complain as much as we were warning users. If you expect to have everything constantly be stable on Linux,
I complained.
You're
I'll
kidding
admit
yourself. It will be stable in the beginning, but you will reach a point where a certain update will cause certain issues. If you don't want that to happen, stick to Windows, because you'll be doing a lot of troubleshooting on Linux at some point. I'm not saying in the beginning, but at some point. So level your expectations. That's all I'm saying.
Very cool, Steve. Thanks for hanging out with us. George, are you there? Would you like to give us a last word? I don't know if George is around. If he joins in, we'll get him. We'll circle back around to him. For now, let's get a last word from Grayson.
Yeah, I did a couple of videos in Odyssey regarding the demonstration of screen magnification for GNOME and KDE. If you want to check that out, it's in the Odyssey. It's Grayson and Putty.
I will link to your channel. I'll link that actually in the YouTube chat for everybody that wants to go check that out. And I'll also link it here in the Jitsi chat for everybody on the call here. All right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's on Odyssey. I refuse to watch it. Sorry.
What? Odyssey is the best video platform out there.
I'm sure it is, but I really don't like library at this point.
Well, that's somebody that lost a lot of crypto recently.
Yep.
That's a broken and jaded man right there.
Well, it's not that I lost any crypto. It's that I never really agreed with them selling their crypto coins for cash to begin with. And that's exactly what got them in trouble. And, they keep talking about, like, crypto freedom and all that stuff. And, like, you're the one that got yourself caught up into it by making your cryptocurrency a security to begin with anyway.
Yeah. Well,
Were you able to find me on Odyssey, too?
yeah, I posted the link on YouTube. Everybody in the chat
Okay.
should be getting that.
Okay, cool.
All right, thanks, Grayson.
You're welcome.
Right. And let's see, Urjan, you around? You like to give us a last word? I don't know. No mic. Okay, well, that's fine. Thanks for hanging out with us. Yeah, and you guys, when y'all join these streams, you don't have to be on camera or on mic. If you just want to hang out and just listen to the conversation, that's A-OK too. But I do want to thank you for hanging out with us. Big Pod, would you like to leave us a last word? Something about space and rockets or
Not
JavaScript?
Rockets. Maybe about, again, I'm gonna plug the project I'm currently working on, UBlue. If you're interested in evolution of Linux operating system, check out Fedora Silverblue and UBlue images. I do think that's the future of Linux, at least for normal people. For nerds, maybe not, but for if you want to actually give Linux to.
Is it going to become a standard?
Hopefully. That kind image-based distributions hopefully become standard.
All right.
Check it out.
Well, I will check that out. Yeah. Silverblue and UBlue?
UBlue, yeah.
UBlue. Okay. All right. Thanks, Big Pod. Murray, would you like to give us a last word?
Okay, I got two things non-IT that I've found interesting recently. One is about mathematics and infinities. Neil deGrasse Tyson had a short video about how infinities are not equal. Some are larger than others. He went through an explanation. So I did a little research and found out a few years ago, two mathematicians proved that all infinities are the same size, which I don't understand either way. I don't understand it, but it's kind of amazing that the human mind can determine that all infinities are the same size. So I found that of note.
No.
I can do some cosmology and space stuff as well. There's something called the Hubble tension, which is used to deter the problem in determining the age of the universe. They used to know what it was. I used to wake up in the morning, how old's the universe? 13.72 billion years, year after year. And then it was 13.82 billion years because they refined it, new technology. Now they don't know. It's between 13.67 and 13.74 because there's two ways of calculating it and they're in conflict. And it's a major problem for them because they may have to find a new way to explain the nature of the universe and its age. So that if you're interested in that kind of thing, you can search the Hubble tension and that.
Oh yeah, I look at stuff like that. I'm into nerdy science related stuff. And one of the things with, especially when you get into math and physics, is at some point a new kind of math has to be invented to explain some of the inconsistencies with some of the things that we've worked out that we think are true, but we're not really sure. Kind of like relativity, you know. We're rethinking all of that.
Fun fact: when we're looking at Newton, we know that his stuff isn't correct outside of Earth. We know that,
but it worked. It worked for a certain amount of time, and then once it no longer works, we got to come up with something different.
We know that Einstein's way of doing the same thing works for most things, but that falls apart when you go into a center of black hole. So even the best have limits, and we need to find out what those limits are and then go past them. That's science.
Yeah. Well, it's a never-ending journey. You're never going to know everything. I mean, we're constantly going to have to learn more. I mean, that's the Linux journey too, right? When you never know everything. You're constantly learning something new, and having to rethink what you thought was true. Well, thanks, Murray.
Okay.
Let's go back to George. And George, do you want to give us a last word? I don't know if George was there. I hadn't seen him in the chat. I don't think he is there with us. So let me go ahead and give my last word. I want to thank you guys here in the chat for hanging out with me. I also want to thank the YouTube chat. I know you guys had some good questions and comments. I'm going to show some names on the screen of all the patrons. Some are here, many or not, but I do want to thank each and every one of these ladies and gentlemen. And other than that, one last thing. Dark Zero, your power situation. You want to tell people about that?
Yes. Thank you for giving me some time to talk about
Mhm.
this. My current power situation, we only get power from 5 p.m. now because of the DST. 5 p.m. to midnight. That's it. The rest of the day, it's random, completely random. When it comes to government supplied power, it comes sometimes for 15 minutes, sometimes for 20 minutes, sometimes 2 hours, sometimes not at all. It's completely random, and due to that issue, I'm gonna have to close the store. So as a result, I will have no income whatsoever, and also my YouTube channel is hanging in limbo because due to the power situation, I cannot make videos because to make videos, it takes time to make the video, edit, and then modify the audio, and then create the thumbnail, and then upload. That takes a long time, and due to the situation, I cannot do it. So I'm relying on my podcast right now to keep the channel alive because I do it once we have power after 5 p.m. Uh, so now that I can monetize the channel finally, I am trying to raise as much as I can via super thanks because I have nothing to offer except having that button there. I have no perks, and I have my fundraiser. If people can donate to my fundraiser, I'll get the money much quicker than YouTube because YouTube likes to take some time. And I haven't verified the AdSense account yet because my account is in Ireland and I have to talk to people in Ireland. So
And doing anything with AdSense, I can warn you, takes a long time.
yes, they need 3 weeks
Takes a long time.
to send me the verification code, and I need to raise at least $250 a month every month. On
I
a
have 23
continuously.
cents that YouTube has been holding hostage for about 15 years at this point.
Yeah. But given the situation, the only thing that works for me right now is the fundraiser, and I need $250 a month. Constantly you can use Patreon or my fundraiser to donate, but I need a steady income now of $250 minimum to pay the electric bill. So I don't know how to do it except getting the word out. Some people are there are a lot of old people now that are suffering. I am very blessed to have the internet and to have some means to get the word out, thanks to you guys. So if we can raise that patronage to stick to a stable 200, at least $250 a month, that'll be an amazing feat of accomplishment. And especially that now I have to go to my sister's wedding. I'll be using a lot of that money on my trip because I need to pay for Airbnb. I have to pay for transportation and all that. So whatever I have raised so far will be gone in a blink of an eye. So I need to raise for next month's bill ASAP. So for this month, I'm still missing $125. But for next month, I need 250 constantly onwards. So if people can help via Patreon or fundraiser, that'll be awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, guys, go check out Dark Zero's Patreon. If you want to, I don't think you can post links
That's
in the YouTube chat.
Patreon.com Zero Linux with an X, not a Z.
Okay.
And then I don't know the fundraiser.
But you guys can go to Zero Linux's YouTube channel. I'm sure he probably has the links probably there.
I'll paste them in the YouTube channel because I am a moderator. I have been for a while.
Okay, there you go. Yeah. Or you can also post it as a comment to this video after we shut down the stream as well, and I'll pin it.
Yeah, give me a second.
That way more people will see it. They won't have to wait till the end of a 2-hour stream to get that link to appear in the chat.
Yep.
All right.
Where is the chat? Okay, I see the chat.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and kill the stream. I'll be sure to post that link, though, when we're done here. Thank you, guys. And other than that, wave bye to YouTube.
Bye, everyone.
Peace.
Take care.
My kernel just finished.